Hi, I'm Katie Nobles,
And I'm disability attorney Michael Leiner.
and you're watching The Bottom Line. Today's topic, do's and don'ts of disability hearings. Michael, we know that you have a ton of experience, years and years of experience in, working in disability hearings. So for this series, we're just going to give you guys a couple of tips. So what is your first tip?
One thing that I think is so important to get across is that less is often more. And what I mean by that is so often, when giving an answer to one of my questions that I would ask a client in a hearing, or the judge's questions that a judge would ask a client in a hearing, the client wants to give a long narrative response and keep it short, keep it sweet. And often, and it goes the same for me. It's not just, I don't just want the client to keep it short and sweet. I also sometimes will intentionally limit the number of questions that I ask my client in the hearing, because I can't always control what my client's going to say. And there's a reason for that: anxiety. I try and put myself in my client's shoes and imagine the significance of the hearing day. Oftentimes my clients have waited years for their hearing day. It's finally there. Their financial future is riding on the line of the outcome of that case. And who wouldn't be scared or nervous about the outcome of that disability hearing? And so, it's really hard, even for my most professional, prepared client, to really control what they might say on that all-important hearing day. So tip number one in this series is going to be: keep it short, keep it sweet. The faster a disability hearing is, usually the better the outcome it is for the client. It's very hard, and I'm going to almost say impossible, to talk your way into winning a disability case, but you can absolutely talk your way into losing a case by saying the wrong thing. So that's a piece of gold that I've acquired from thousands of hearings that I've handled over the years, Katie.
Today's topic, do's and don'ts of disability hearings, part 2. Michael, you're giving all of your great tips to all of our followers out there about disability hearings. So part 1 was keep it short and sweet. What is tip number 2?
Tip number 2 that I want to get across to people who are watching this series has to do with the importance of not being afraid to be yourself in a disability hearing. What I mean by that is, when I'm preparing clients for their hearing, Katie, my clients will say to me all the time, I'm really nervous that I might, cry, or what happens if I need to take a break because it's too emotional, or I'm in too much pain that I need to stop the hearing. Don't forget what this hearing is. This is a disability hearing. You're going before a disability judge. And so there really is no shame, or don't be too prideful if you need to, cry, or you need to show some emotion in your hearing. This is a big day. And I know I've said that in a lot of the different posts that we've done, but anybody would understand that. And truthfully, I think that when people do show emotion in their hearings, and they do show their true selves, it adds character, it adds flavor to the case. I don't want my clients to try and win an Emmy or an Oscar when they're in the middle of their hearing. This, you don't get points for acting or trying to embellish your symptoms, because at the end of the day, your medical records have to match your story. But who wouldn't show emotion and cry or feel anxious about this big day and all of the different pain or depression or anxiety that they're having, which is what this entire hearing is about. So, a big tip that I think I really want to get across to people that are watching this is just don't be afraid to be yourself It's okay to cry. It's okay if you need to pause the hearing because you're in too much pain and maybe you just need to take a break, get a drink of water, and judges will understand that.
Today's topic, do's and don'ts of disability hearings, part 3. Michael, we've already given 2 tips. Be yourself and, of course, keep it short and sweet. What do we want to talk about this week?
The next tip that I think is really important for people to understand is that your testimony should match your presentation in your hearing. One thing that is something that I see happen a lot in hearings is people will testify that, for example, a judge will ask, or I'll ask a client, how long are you able to sit for at one time? And my client will testify and say, well, I need to change positions after I sit for only 15 minutes. But in an hour-long hearing, my client will sit for an hour straight.
Even if they're in pain while doing so.
Even if I can look at them and, maybe I see their leg throbbing under the table and I know that they're sitting like a soldier because they want to give respect to the judge. And it kind of goes back to what I said in an earlier tip, which is don't be afraid to be yourself. But make sure that your testimony matches your presentation. Again, don't act, but don't be afraid to be yourself either in a disability hearing.
Sure, and now that we're dealing with these times with COVID-19, people aren't in the courtroom, so it might even be harder to illustrate that. So how can they do that?
And that's a great point, Katie, because right now, since March of 2020, all of our hearings have been on the phone. And in fact, we just got word from the Commissioner of Social Security that they're not even telling us exactly when we can expect we might be going back to court. We have no idea right now.
Right.
And so, they are talking about implementing video hearings, so at least that'll give a judge some ability to see a client in a hearing. Mm-hmm. So right now, while we're doing all of our hearings on the phone, the best advice that I can give people is when they're at home testifying from their living room just on the phone, it's okay to say to a judge on the phone, excuse me, I just need to take a moment to adjust myself. Mm-hmm. So when you're in the middle of testifying, if a judge asks how long can you sit for, and you can only sit for 15 minutes, when you're when you need to adjust on your couch or, in a chair while you're at home, say that.
Right.
Say it. If you need to, lie down or switch positions, bring the judge into your living room like you used to be able to go into the judge's courtroom. And I know that that's not necessarily easy for my clients, but I'll ask my client a question at the end of the hearing and say, you know what? We haven't had the opportunity to see you for the last hour. But while we've been talking, what have you been doing? Mm-hmm. And the answers that I've been getting are really interesting because while I think the judge suspects that the person is just sitting there, I've had responses like, I've been lying down. Mm-hmm. Because I'm in severe pain. I'm sitting here with my legs raised. Those responses are so important because I really think it helps give Social Security a flavor of what's going on and helps bring our cases to life. So that's just another great tip that I think that people can think about when preparing for their hearing and when actually doing their hearing.
Today's topic, do's and don'ts of disability hearings, part 4. So, Michael, we are back giving some great tips. Tell us about your 4th tip.
Yeah, so one tip that I always want to make sure that occurs with our clients in their cases is that they're getting opinions from their doctors about their functional limitations. It is so essential to help with understanding, the inability to work, to get opinions from your doctors about, the limitations that you have. Every disability case is going to have a lot of medical records in it, but medical records unfortunately aren't written in language that's necessarily conducive to the disability language, which is ultimately how much a person's able to sit, stand, walk, lift, and carry, whether the person's going to be able to stay on task throughout a workday. So getting an opinion from your doctor, we have forms that we can provide to our clients, or even better, some doctors are willing to provide narrative statements about their limitations. is just so helpful to the overall picture of a case, because it gives a judge a greater window beyond what the records say and says, based on my medical opinion with this person's limitations with their medical conditions, I believe that they would be unable to perform any more than this. So essential, so helpful.
Today's topic, do's and don'ts of disability hearings, part 5. Michael, we are back with more tips, and today we're going to be talking about another great tip. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so in a prior episode, we talked about the importance of getting opinions from your doctors, the people that are treating you for your conditions. But beyond just getting opinions from, the people whose medical care you're in, it's also really important to get some letters or statements from people that we call third parties. Mm-hmm. People who are intimately familiar with you, whether that's your spouse, a sibling, your children, if you're if they're helping you out with things. It can be a caseworker or a social worker, just anybody in the community who is intimately familiar with how you are going about your daily routine. Now, I want to talk about go a little bit further in depth.
Yeah,
because
sure.
The value of these statements, it's going to be a little bit different than the value of getting a statement from a medical doctor. And the way that Social Security is going to look at it is going to be very different. A letter from your mother or your spouse isn't going to be necessarily given the same amount of weight in a disability decision as an opinion from a medical doctor. If you get a letter from your spouse and they're able to kind of describe for the judge, the pain that they're seeing you go through every day, whether that's mental pain or physical pain, or the same thing from anybody else that's providing some type of source statement, it can just be so helpful to really giving a judge or a decision maker kind of like an intimate look into what your daily life is like, which is so much of what we're trying to do to paint a good picture for our clients to Social Security. So, the importance of those statements, again, just can't be understated.
That's right. So just give them a little bit of a peek into what the daily life is truly like on a personal level.
Exactly, Katie.
All right. Thanks so much, Michael. We're going to be answering all of your guys' questions. Visit our website, linerlegal.com, and submit those today.
Thank you.